Imagine having, like, the power of an entire software engineering team right there at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Ready to go just based on simple instructions.
It's a pretty wild thought.
Right. And what if the way we build technology, the way we interact with it, is about to just fundamentally shift? Not just for coders, but maybe every kind of knowledge work.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into the implications of AI coding agents. We're drawing on some, frankly, electrifying insights from a recent Y Combinator discussion.
Mm-hmm. Prepare for some potentially big aha moments, I think, about where work and tech might be heading.
We're going to be digging into the perspective shared there, really trying to understand these incredibly rapid advancements in AI coding.
Yeah, looking beneath the surface a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is to grasp the potential, the transformative power of these tools. We'll look at the arguments for this massive impact.
And the arguments against, the skepticism, which is understandable.
Definitely. And figure out what it all means for individuals, for industries, for you listening. Okay, let's unpack this. One of the first ideas that really grabbed me was this comparison. Software engineers as highly paid organic farmers. What was that about?
Right. And then the kicker is comparing the AI coding agents to a combine harvester.
Oof. Yeah.
That initial tweet, well, it definitely stirred the pot, you can imagine, especially among software engineers.
I bet.
But if you think about it from, first principles, what's the core function here? It forces us to ask, is automating a big chunk of software development just inevitable now?
Translating ideas into working code, basically.
Exactly. And if a machine can do more and more of that translation, well, what happens to the human role?
And this wasn't just theory. Someone in this discussion actually kind of jumped into the deep end, started building real things with these tools.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting, seeing the real-world applications. So, for example, rebuilding an old childhood word game with no-code tools that already shows you something about accessibility.
Okay, yeah. Lovable and Replit, I think they were called.
That's them. But then rebuilding a 20-year-old blog, tumbleonfield.com.
Oh, I saw that.
In 90 minutes.
Yeah.
On a train, using Claude Code. I mean, think about that.
90 minutes. That's... Wow.
He set up hosting, wrote new software, migrated 2 decades of old posts. That's not just faster coding, it's a completely different way of operating.
It's like going from, writing a letter by hand to sending an instant message globally.
Kind of, yeah. Or maybe horse and buggy to jet plane, like you said.
And there was an even bigger project too, right? Something about recipes.
Ah, yes. Recipes.ai. That one got up to, 35,000 lines of code? With an interactive voice agent and everything.
And the key thing was...
0 lines of handwritten code. Absolutely none.
How does that even work?
They called it vibe coding mode. Basically, you prompt the AI, you guide it with natural language, you sort of set the vibe.
Okay.
And then you're mostly just auto-accepting the code it generates. Less typing, more directing.
Like conducting an orchestra instead of playing every instrument. Vibe coding. I like that. And the productivity claim was huge, wasn't it?
Something like 10x more productive than when he was coding professionally maybe 10 years ago. It's a staggering number.
10 times. That requires some critical thinking, doesn't it? If one person can do that.
Exactly. What happens when that scales? And we're already seeing signs of that starting to happen, especially in the startup world.
Right. The Y Combinator data point, that was pretty stark.
Yeah, adoption of these AI-assisted coding styles among YC founders went from basically 0 2 batches ago to maybe 25% in the last batch. And now the report is it could be a third, maybe even half of the current batch building, primarily this way.
Wow. That's exponential growth.
Now, it's fair to point out, these are often newer code bases, smaller teams, probably not dealing with mountains of legacy code yet.
Sure, the Greenfield projects.
But it's still the frontier. It shows where things are heading fast.
Okay, but with any potentially game-changing tech, there's always skepticism. And rightly so. What were the main pushbacks discussed?
Well, the first, maybe most common one you hear is, look, AI is just never going to be good enough for real professional code bases. The complex, critical stuff.
It's stuff that runs banks or airplanes.
Exactly. It's a reasonable gut reaction.
But the counter argument was pretty strong, focusing on the speed.
The sheer pace of improvement. The argument is, look how fast these models and tools are getting better. Is it really likely they'll just suddenly hit a wall and stop improving?
Probably not, based on the trajectory.
And they brought up the innovator's dilemma analogy. Remember that? New tech often looks like a toy at first. seems inadequate compared to the incumbent.
Like digital cameras versus film initially, or maybe even early cars versus horses.
Precisely. They start niche, maybe seem clunky, but they improve rapidly and eventually just take over. It's a classic pattern.
Okay, that makes sense. But there was another, maybe more sophisticated objection, wasn't there? Something about a paradox.
Ah, yes. The Jevons paradox. Good old Jevons.
Explain that one again.
So the idea is when you make using a resource much more efficient in this case, making software development way cheaper and faster, the demand for that resource software actually goes up, sometimes way up. So the argument goes, even with AI efficiency, we'll just want so much more software that will still need more human engineers.
Okay, I can see the logic. Cheaper software means we build more stuff, integrate it everywhere, so demand for engineers still grows. Makes sense.
It does have a certain logic, but the counter-argument is pretty compelling too.
Which is?
Which is that, yes, demand for software might explode maybe 10x, maybe 100x, but AI itself will likely be the primary way that increased demand gets met.
Oh.
Think back to the combine harvester. Did it lead to us eating 10x more food? Maybe slightly more, overall, sure. But the number of farmers needed per bushel of wheat, it plummeted, like a 1,000x reduction or something crazy.
Right. Productivity skyrocketed. But the labor needed for that unit of production drastically decreased.
Exactly. So the fear is, or the prediction is, something similar happens in software. We get vastly more software, but it's largely built by AI, meaning fewer traditional human coding jobs relative to the output.
That's disruptive.
And then there was this idea of on-demand custom software. What did that look like?
Imagine needing a specific tool for a task right now. Instead of searching for an app or trying to build it, you just ask an AI.
Like talking to Jarvis from Iron Man.
Kind of. You describe the problem, maybe in natural language, and the AI just spins up a temporary custom piece of software just for that task.
And then just vanishes when you're done.
Potentially, yeah. Fleeting, bespoke software created instantly for your specific need.
Wow. Okay, so if we pull all this together, what's the big picture for the traditional software engineer role, say, in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, the perspective coming out of this discussion is pretty clear. The role as we know it today is likely to change significantly. It might even, not really exist in the same way.
So fewer people writing code line by line, probably. The demand seems likely to shift towards smart people who know how to wrangle these AI coding machines, as they put it. People who can define the problem well, guide the AI, manage the process.
AI wranglers.
Yeah.
Or AI whisperers for code. This is like the next level of abstraction, isn't it? We went from machine code to assembly to higher level languages now. AI.
Exactly. It's a continuation of that historical trend towards higher levels of abstraction in programming.
But what about the things that feel uniquely human? Like identifying what problems are actually worth solving in the first place, or that taste factor.
That's the huge question, isn't it? Can AI really replicate that insight, that ability to see a need people don't even know they have yet, or that deep understanding of user experience that makes a product feel just right?
Yeah, the je ne sais quoi of great software.
Right. And the point was made, often the truly exceptional software, the stuff we love, has a single obsessed human, or maybe a small, tight-knit team driving that vision. Think Steve Jobs and Apple's design focus?
That intense focus on the user, the details. Can you program obsession? Can you code taste?
It's hard to imagine, right now at least. Maybe long-term, who knows. But for the short to medium term, the thinking is these AI tools are mainly going to supercharge individual founders and small teams, give them incredible leverage.
So the human element of vision, problem selection, and that aesthetic sense remains critical, maybe even more critical, while the mechanics get automated.
That seems to be the consensus for now, yes. It empowers the visionary.
Okay. But the conversation didn't just stay with software, did it? It branched out.
No, it naturally moved on to think about, well, what does this mean for other knowledge work? Law, medicine, accounting.
Fields that often seem resistant to technological upheaval.
Sometimes, yeah. But we're seeing more and more startups successfully using AI to tackle problems in these areas. It's happening.
And wasn't there a specific example? Laura, the legal tech company?
Yes, Laura, a Swedish company from YC. The interesting thing there was challenging the old assumption that, lawyers don't buy software. Maybe because of billable hours or just tradition.
Right, that was the trope.
But Laura's success suggests that's changing. There's this growing pressure now across all industries to figure out AI. It's moving from a nice to have to, basically essential.
It's becoming table stakes. like needing internet access.
Exactly. The argument is, pretty soon, if you're a law firm or a finance company not using AI effectively, you'll just be at a massive competitive disadvantage.
Like bringing a knife to a gunfight or a quill pen to a word processor fight.
Something like that. Imagine competing against a firm that automates 80% of its research and document review. How do you keep up?
You probably can't. And if AI does take over more of this knowledge work, what's the potential upside for the rest of us, for consumers?
Potentially a huge consumer surplus.
Yeah.
If the cost of legal advice or medical diagnostics or accounting services comes down dramatically.
Because AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right. Then these services could become much more accessible to many more people. It could really democratize expertise.
That sounds incredibly positive, actually. More access to vital services. But transitions like this are never smooth, are they? The discussion must have touched on the bumps in the road.
Oh, absolutely. While the end state might look like abundance, getting there could be, well, pretty disruptive. You could see large numbers of people displaced from their current roles.
Huge need for retraining, adapting. Could be painful for a lot of folks.
Yes, significant societal challenges there. And then there's the potential for pushback from established groups.
Like professional bodies trying to protect their turf.
Exactly. The idea of protectionist measures came up. Think about medical associations or bar associations possibly trying to limit AI adoption through regulation, even if the AI is provably better or safer in some cases.
A bit like the arguments around self-driving cars, maybe, where regulations lag behind the tech, possibly even holding back safety improvements.
That was the parallel drawn, yeah. It's that classic tension between progress and preserving the status quo.
But despite those challenges, the overall tone seemed optimistic.
Fundamentally, yes. There was this underlying view that, looking back through history, every major tech leap has, on balance, improved human life, made things better overall.
But the worry is about this transition, the speed of it.
The speed and the potential scale of the disruption this time around. That's the main concern, I think. The transition itself could be rough.
Okay, so wrapping up, for people listening, maybe founders, maybe people thinking about their careers, what was the key takeaway, the advice?
Number one, get your hands dirty with these tools. Stay up to date. Even if they're not perfect for you today, understanding what they can do, where they're going, gives you a huge advantage. Don't ignore it.
Be curious. Experiment.
Exactly. And number two, maybe even more important, never lose sight of understanding human problems. What do people actually need? What are their pain points?
Because technology is just a tool to solve those problems.
Right. At the end of the day, yes. Identifying the right problem to solve becomes even more valuable when the how of building the solution gets easier.
That makes a lot of sense. And there was that interesting point about smaller teams, too.
Yeah, the idea that AI might enable much smaller, leaner teams to build really high-quality, well-designed products. Maybe even better products because there's clearer ownership, less bureaucracy, a more direct line from vision to execution.
Less design by committee, more focused vision. I can see that. Wow. It really feels like we're looking at a fundamental reshaping, not just for engineers, but for almost anyone doing knowledge work.
It really does. The pace is just astonishing. And the potential impact across so many fields is hard to overstate. It's definitely an extraordinary time to be thinking about this stuff.
This deep dive, really digging into those Y Combinator insights on AI coding agents, it paints a picture of a massive shift underway. It's more than just faster code. It's changing how we create, how we interact with tech. The ripples will be huge. So here's a final, maybe bold prediction, thinking from first principles. Just like the printing press unlocked information for the masses, these AI agents could democratize creation. We might see an explosion of sophisticated software coming from places we never expect. That's a powerful thought. And here's something provocative for you to chew on. If building complex software becomes radically easier, accessible to almost anyone with a good idea, what totally new problems, things we haven't even conceived of yet, will you identify and decide to solve? And in that world, where code generation is easy, what human skills, creativity, empathy, defining the right complex problems, what becomes truly priceless? That's the question. Definitely something worth pondering. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.